So, Benny, I have been sitting on the receipts of you for far too long. You and your sociopathic behavior and the way you operate your businesses and your grift. So you want to go, Benny? You want to talk about my children and make this personal? Let's go, because I have been sitting on this for far too long. And guess what? A lot of people have been sitting on things about you for far too long. And I will remind you that if you live in a glass house, stop throwing stones for your little Facebook dollars. TTFN, you're next. And Benny, I wouldn't even try to retroactively delete anything on Telegram because I backed it all up years ago, many moons ago, because I've known you're a piece of shit. You see, Benny, it's really easy for anyone to admit that they have sex with men outside of marriage. We all like to get our whistle wet, okay? I'm less interested in that, though. I think everyone will be very interested in your financials and the story of how Benny Johnson came to be in the first place. TTFN.
Ashley St. Clair has been on a tear lately. If that name sounds familiar to you, it might be because she had a stint as a right-wing influencer for a while, but it's most likely because she had a kid with Elon Musk. Earlier this year, she sued XAI because Grok kept making and sharing pornographic AI images and videos of her, oftentimes depicting her as much younger than she actually was. Ashley became a MAGA influencer in the early days of MAGA back in 2015, 2016. So at the time, if any of you remember, Obama was still president, but Donald Trump was just Donald Trump. And at the time, he was very critical of Obama and his presidency on Twitter. It's where, for example, he kept calling Obama's nationality into question, planting the seeds for the much more overtly racist rhetoric that we're unfortunately very used to hearing and seeing today. Some of us said that that type of questioning and thinking was the problem back then, and we said that it would only get worse in the coming years. 10 years later, we were right. So Trump also railed against, for example, the Iran nuclear deal back then. When he became Obama's successor in the White House, he then dismantled the deal, and 10 years later, we are now at war with Iran on behalf of Israel. So all of this was happening on social media, on Twitter specifically, and if you were on Twitter back then, you might recall that it was a very, very different place compared to what it is today. When Trump started using it to push his MAGA movement, there was a distinct shift in the way Twitter felt, but also in the way it was used. Trump learned early on that if he said something very inflammatory on Twitter, the news would cover it, and in the game of politics, like in the media and entertainment landscapes, all press is good press. News organizations seeking to be critical of Trump only succeeded in platforming his rhetoric further, essentially promoting him as a presidential candidate. This is a troublesome dichotomy that still exists today. It's something that I personally grapple with when covering terrible things that our politicians and political influencers do. The question is, is something inherently newsworthy because of who said it or who did it? Or if we just stop talking about it, will it eventually just go away? Do we even have the option to stop talking about things when the things we're talking about were being done and said by the now president of the United States? And to be fair, these questions typically don't arise surrounding Donald Trump anymore. He is the president. The things he says and does are incredibly relevant to the American people. And especially at this point, most people already know how they feel about him. But back in 2015, it was a very different time and a very different Donald Trump that we were dealing with. Trump got a ton of free media coverage just because people could not stop talking about him. As other social platforms like Instagram grew in popularity, it became clear that social media was going to be an incredibly important and relevant front in the new political landscape. And speaking personally for a minute, I was working in marketing at the time, so I was on Twitter quite a bit, definitely more than I wanted to be. So I watched all of this unfold in real time. It was then that I started a blog, and long story short, here I am now in front of you. But the idea of regular people from different educational and professional and personal backgrounds getting to have a say in the greater political and societal conversations was seen at the time as almost revolutionary. These so-called regular people were considered to be trusted sources on a myriad of things in the sense that they were understood to not be getting paid to promote a message. They were real people on the ground living life in the United States, representing others just like them. Over time, of course, that changed because it wasn't long before astroturfing within these online spaces took over. It wasn't long before the MAGA movement specifically began paying influencers to push a very specific message and agenda. So with all of that said, Ashley St. Clair offered some insight into exactly this in a post that she made just a few days ago. She said she was a MAGA influencer for about 10 years, being brought in to work with Turning Point USA fresh out of college at just 19 years old.
In 2015-2016, MAGA and their operators realized how important and consequential social media was for politics. This really started during the Obama years when they harnessed the internet and email campaign messaging, and then MAGA took it to the next level with things like Cambridge Analytica and coordinated messaging on sites like Twitter. Their main avenues for this influence are group chats, paid influence campaigns, and parties. Now, for the group chats, they operate with large influencers, particularly on Twitter. That is their primary mode of communication, is Twitter. And they will have these giant group chats that make influencers and individuals feel important because they are in group chats with members of the administration, people on the Trump team, in which they coordinate these messaging tactics. They also have coordinated calls with these campaigns and with these politicians, so you feel that you are important.
So all of this was going on in a very coordinated and deliberate way for the last 10 years. She mentioned Cambridge Analytica, which was a huge scandal when it was broken by a whistleblower, and MAGA heavyweights, namely Steve Bannon, were found to be behind it, but the world moved on. She goes on to explain how the MAGA movement was able to pay influencers to promote a message while bypassing disclosure laws using loopholes.
So they have these Republican operatives, some of which were former White House, who build out these platforms that these right-wing influencers can log onto and see active campaigns and sign up for and get paid for promoting certain messaging, certain initiatives, certain petitions. And this pay is typically, per click. Sometimes it's a flat rate, but it is everything from, hey, tell your audience to call their members of Congress and vote a particular way on this bill, or, have your followers sign this petition, promote this propaganda, XYZ.
And these influencers would be given a script to repeat to their audience, which is why you would often hear not just the same messaging coming from them, but the exact same wording coming from these influencers. There is something to be said also for the fact that repeating the same words over and over again really helps to drive a message into the brains of an audience, again, something that Donald Trump himself knows extremely well. However, while brands seeking to use influencers to promote products or services often employ similar tactics, they're required to disclose that the posts are paid ads. Since MAGA wasn't ever selling a product or service, they were exempt from those disclosures. And we've heard of similar schemes popping up with right-wing and left-wing commentators. And when I say left, I'm not really referring to the more progressive circles, although I'm sure arguments could be made. But the left, the more corporate, centrist, DNC left, seemed to get on board with the strategy later on in the game, but unfortunately for them, left-leaning audiences tend to be less forgiving of these things than right-leaning ones. Anyway, these bigger influencers get their messaging directly from the top, but the messaging trickles down to smaller creators who just opine independently from the larger machine, echoing the same rhetoric, but not getting paid as much, if anything at all.
And again, they also have these group chats with members of the administration and high-up officials that, especially when a scandal or controversy breaks out, all of this messaging is coordinated. Hey, here's how we respond to the files. Here's how we respond to the war. Here is how we respond to everything. So there's this entire ecosystem of large influencers. All of the largest influencers that you have seen in the right wing 99% of them are paid or compensated or having their back scratched in one way or another. And then this trickles down because the people under them, these smaller influencers, are not aware of this. So when they're looking to these larger accounts in response to controversies or messaging, what they're seeing is actually very coordinated and very sophisticated influence campaigns from the top. There is no free thinking here whatsoever. They are waiting to get marching orders and a direct deposit.
So nothing we haven't suspected or heard before, but it is nice to get confirmation from someone who was so deeply entrenched in that world. She said that outside of this, independent, wealthy people could contact the influencer directly to target a particular entity or agenda. And again, that wouldn't have to be disclosed anywhere. And then she mentioned Israel.
To obfuscate things even more, this happens between private companies as well. So some of the biggest private companies within the right, particularly the right-wing media, they will be reached out to by people who want particular messaging. I was aware of this several times in regards to Israel, where Republican companies, right-wing companies, private media companies were offered millions of dollars to promote pro-Israel messaging and just sprinkle in things. So they're also doing this very covertly when they're making these asks. They're saying, let's just sprinkle it in here and there for a larger scale, long-term influence campaign.
And at the risk of eliciting any kind of sympathy for the people involved in this kind of work, here she is explaining that even if these influencers want out of the scheme, it's often very difficult for them to break out.
And at the other end of almost all of these payments are also confidentiality agreements, meaning that even if these individuals involved had a change of heart and realized that they are participating in great evil, that they cannot speak up about it or they will get sued into oblivion. So not only have the wealthy created a system in which their political influence means far more than yours, but they've also been the architects of a system in which they have these manufactured reputations and narratives, and they manufacture silence through these incredibly asymmetric contracts in which people could lose their livelihoods and reputations for speaking.
Ashley St. Clair, however you feel about her regarding her authenticity or her motives, etc., has already revealed quite a bit about the inner workings of the Trump/MAGA propaganda machine, and she seems poised to reveal quite a bit more, re Benny Johnson. As she mentioned in her video, she was 19 years old when she started doing this work, and 19 is still a pretty young and impressionable age. She's spoken in interviews about how she fell into right-wing ideologies in the first place, so you can look into that if you're interested. And she has taken some criticism for only waking up to how terrible the right is after she was made to be a victim of it herself. Regardless, she seems to be taking steps now to undo some of the damage that she has contributed to. She co-wrote an anti-transgender children's book, and she recently took her name off of it. I'm not sure if she's still profiting off of it or if she plans to donate any of the money that she made from it, but she's really only just been at this for a few months. 2026 has been a big year for her. So again, however you feel about her, I do want to hear what else she has to say. And the fact that her former associates in that right-wing influencer sphere are speaking out against her now suggests that they are afraid of what she might reveal, which is very exciting for us. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more.